To complete the most significant news for this day, Y News continues. Here are the top stories. Senator Antonio Trillanes continues to prepare for his impending arrest, even if Senate leaders assured to block any attempt to arrest him as long as he stays within the Senate premises and there is no official warrant of arrest. Trillanes says his legal team continued to find ways to counter President Rodrigo Duterte's order to void his amnesty.
Yung level of preparedness naman namin, hindi naman nagbabago. So tuloy-tuloy lang yan. We're not being paranoid about.
The embattled lawmaker is now on his fourth day under Senate confinement, admitting to having sleepless nights and turning to music to keep himself calm. Senator Trillanes also reveals he kept his family away from the controversy and it is only Magdalo Party List Representative Gary Alejano who keeps him company. For now, the lawmaker is just awaiting confirmation from the Armed Forces of the Philippines on the possible issuance of arrest warrant before he decides to go home.
Na itong branch 150, no, yung civilian court na isa, ay hindi rin po mag-i-issue ng warrant ngayong araw na ito. So, with that, ito na lang po, kukumpirmahin na lang namin itong sa military kung i-enforce pa rin nila yung itong pag-aaresto sa akin. So once ma-confirma po namin na hindi po itutuloy, ay pwede na pong makauwi.
President Rodrigo Duterte has ordered the Armed Forces of the Philippines to wait and adhere with the decision of the court regarding the impending arrest of Senator Trillanes. According to presidential spokesperson Harry Roque, the president made the decision after consulting his cabinet officials on the proclamation number 572 during their visit to Jordan. It can be recalled that the Department of Justice filed a motion for arrest and hold departure order against Trillanes at the Makati Regional Trial Court. The deliberation of the case has been set on September 13, Tuesday. Roque also discounted rumors of alleged coup d'etat on the part of the military and civilians as a possible result of the administration's move to void Trillanes' amnesty.
Siguro po guli-guli niya yan. Good luck po. Dahil siya naman napakatagal na niyang naging senador, wala naman siyang nagawa para sa mga kasundaduhan natin. Si Presidente, 2 taon ba lang nakaupo bilang Presidente, na doble na niya ang sweldo ng ating mga kasundaduhan. So good luck, Senator Trillanes. Believe in your own needs.
Meanwhile, the military officer who administered Senator Antonio Trillanes IV's oath-taking of the granted amnesty in 2011 surfaces at the Department of National Defense. Colonel Josefa Berbigal was called for an emergency meeting this morning with Defense Undersecretary for Operations Cesariano, Undersecretary Toby Purisima, and Defense Legal Lawyer Ronald Patrick Rubin. Berbigal was the chief of the DND Ad Hoc Committee Secretariat when the oath-taking took place. She remains in active service as the current head of the DND-AFP Office of Ethical Standard and Public Accountability. Defense Undersecretary Llano says Berbigal relayed to them the events that happened on the day of Trillanes' oath-taking, but she denies knowledge on the current whereabouts of Trillanes' amnesty application. The officials have refused to disclose any more details on the issue in deference to the sub judice law following Trillanes' filed petition before the Supreme Court. President Rodrigo Duterte is set to return home from Jordan a day earlier than his original schedule after finishing all events related to his visit. According to presidential spokesperson Secretary Harry Roque, Duterte will depart from Jordan Friday at 9 p.m. and will arrive in Davao City on Saturday. The president was supposed to be back on Sunday. Among the gains that Duterte is expecting to bring home are 8 letters of intent and 2 memoranda of understanding, which are expected to generate over 500 jobs. The Philippines also signed agreements with Jordan to establish Joint Commission for Bilateral Cooperation, Defense Cooperation, seafarers training, and employment of Filipino domestic workers. Jordan also promised to provide the Philippines with 2 Cobra attack helicopters aside from military weapons such as mortars, rifles, and rocket-propelled grenade, following agreement to further bolster its diplomatic ties.
And I believe that this is a new era of cooperation. As we have discussed privately, there has already been on many levels. Your visit here will now propel us into the next.
I would like to assure you that we have come here to pledge our friendship, our cooperation to you, and our national interest here in the Middle East, mostly is really so many thousands of Filipinos.
In other news, the Transportation Department and the Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board, or LTFRB, are lamenting the decision of a court to allow motorcycle ride-hailing service Angkas to resume its operations. In a joint statement, the DOTR and LTFRB said the preliminary injunction by the Mandaluyong Regional Trial Court would limit their actions to curb colorum vehicles, saying Angkas is an unregistered service only interested in making a profit. The ruling prohibits the two agencies from interfering in Angkas's operation pending final ruling of the case filed against them. Angkas drivers also cannot be apprehended except when they have traffic violations. The Transportation Department insists they have the power to regulate all ride-hailing services operating in the country, further arguing that under the Land Transportation and Traffic Code, private motorcycles should not be used as a mode of public transportation because it will put commuters at risk. The LTFRB and the DOTR are planning to appeal the court's decision. Meanwhile, the Bureau of Customs shuts down a warehouse in Marilao, Bulacan, allegedly containing sacks of smuggled rice from China. Around 3,000 sacks of rice said to have been illegally imported were found inside the warehouse owned by a certain Rhea Luella Ramirez. Ramirez's legal counsel insists that the rice stocks underwent legal importation proceedings and that his client secured pertinent permits for the rice shipment. He also denies hoarding allegations, saying these rice stocks are already set to be delivered to local markets.
Actually, ito pong bigas na nandyan, ongoing po yung delivery. Delivery? Yes, ongoing yung delivery. In fact, meron pa nga ditong delivery na hindi maipasok kasi sinelyuhan nila yung bodega. And we will be paying for the demurahe and the damages to the truckers dahil hindi maipasok.
However, the Customs Bureau insists the warehouse will remain closed until its owner presents the necessary papers. And for the news abroad, here's Stephanie C. live from Hong Kong. Stephanie, good evening.
Good evening, William. A magnitude 6.3 earthquake struck central Ecuador on Thursday, injuring one person and disrupting power supply to nearby areas. The earthquake hit 94 kilometers south of the city of Ambato at a depth of 112 kilometers, according to the U.S. Geological Survey. The quake knocked down power cables, leaving the areas of Puertas Negras, Guano, and Chunchi without electricity. There was slight damage to homes and landslides hit a road. One person suffered a broken bone in the town of Babahoyo, and authorities were assessing whether any houses had collapsed. Hokkaido in Japan remains at a standstill after a powerful quake struck the island, killing 16 people. Kath Dumaraos tells us why.
An island-wide power outage continues to strand both tourists and locals alike on Japan's northern island of Hokkaido on Friday, a day after a powerful earthquake killed 16 people. Hokkaido Electric Power Co. shut its fossil fuel-fired power plants as a precaution after the 6.7 magnitude quake struck just before dawn on Thursday. Although electricity had been restored to nearly half the island's 5.3 million residents, police officers were still needed in the city center of Sapporo to direct vehicles at road junctions unlit by the usual traffic lights.
In order to supply electricity to as many areas as possible, we should ask residents in the area where the supply restarted to conserve electricity.
Huge queues were also seen at public offices where each person was allowed 30 minutes to charge their phone. Even with a fully charged phone, however, getting reception remained difficult as many cellular phone towers across the islands were still running on backup generators, local media reported. At Sapporo train station, crowds of people waited for train services to resume, some of whom had been forced to sleep on the street overnight. The island, about the size of Austria, is a popular tourist destination known for its mountains, lakes, and seafood. Kat Dumaraos, UNTV News and Rescue.
Brazilians are holding a vigil in Sao Paulo as far-right presidential candidate Jair Bolsonaro recuperates in a hospital after suffering a life-threatening stab wound. President Michel Temer, meanwhile, condemns the stabbing attack. Dave Tirao tells us why.
Supporters of the leading candidate in Brazil's presidential election, Jair Bolsonaro, held a candlelight vigil in Sao Paulo on Thursday night after the presidential hopeful was stabbed by an assailant at a campaign rally. Hospital officials said Bolsonaro had suffered a deep and life-threatening stab wound in his intestines and was in a serious but stable condition. He was recuperating well in intensive care after 2 hours of surgery, they added, but would spend at least a week to 10 days in hospital.
I
received the news with a heavy heart. At the end of the day, Brazil is considered the world's third largest democracy. And a country like Brazil has certain democratic dimensions. It has a presidential candidate who is leading in opinion polls and who has suffered from a bad and cheap attack. We must consider the concepts of democracy.
President Michel Temer condemned the stabbing of attack of Bolsonaro.
It's an intolerance in Brazilian society. It's intolerable that there are people falsifying their information during the electoral campaign. It is intolerable that we live in a democratic state with the rule of law and there is no chance of a peaceful campaign, a campaign where people go and present their ideas.
Police said the suspect has been arrested and named him as Adelio Obispo de Oliveira. It said the circumstances were being investigated. Bolsonaro, who has spent nearly 3 decades in Congress, is a law and order candidate who routinely says that Brazilian police should kill suspected drug traffickers and other criminals at will. He openly praised Brazil's military dictatorship and in the past said it should have killed more people. The attack on Bolsonaro is a dramatic twist in what is already Brazil's most unpredictable election since the country's return to democracy 3 decades ago. Corruption investigations have jailed scores of powerful businessmen and politicians and alienated infuriated voters. Dave Tirao, UNTV News and Rescue, Brazil.
U.S. prosecutors have charged a North Korean man identified as Park Jin-hyuk, allegedly involved in creating the malicious software used to cripple the UK's National Health Service. The 2017 incident left NHS staff reverting to pen and paper after being locked out of computer systems. The hacking collective is also blamed for the hack on Sony Pictures in 2014. Mr. Park, said to be linked to the Lazarus Group, is charged with 1 count of conspiracy to commit computer fraud and abuse and wire fraud. North Korea routinely denies being involved in the hack attacks attributed to them. Top officials of the Trump administration deny that they have a hand in the controversial New York Times Resistance article as the guessing game continues in Washington. Kat Carriedo tells us why.
Top aides to President Donald Trump scrambled to deny authorship of an anonymous New York Times opinion column that slammed the U.S. president's leadership style and described the quiet resistance to him within his own administration. By midday, 7 senior officials have disavowed the piece, including Vice President Mike Pence.
To a president who's been delivering on the promises that he made to the people of America every day since.
On Wednesday, visibly angry at the White House event, Trump called the NY Times article a gutless editorial, and in a later tweet, he suggested it was treasonous. The Times opinion section has said the piece was written by a senior official in the administration and that it was taking the rare step of publishing an anonymous article because disclosing the author's identity would jeopardize the person's job. Several other cabinet members and top officials have also denied writing the piece. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo attacked the writer as a disgruntled, deceptive, bad actor.
I come from a place where
If you're not in a position to execute the commander's intent, you have a singular option. It is to leave. And this person instead, according to the New York Times, chose not only to stay, but to undermine what President Trump and this administration are trying to do.
Some of the guessing game over the authorship centered on whether the author worked in the White House or a federal agency. Language in the article, including the use of the unusual word lodestar, was the subject of wide online speculation and language searches. White House spokeswoman Sarah Sanders tried to shut down the speculation as Trump sought to portray the op-ed as a reflection of yet more anger by Democrats who have never accepted his surprise 2016 presidential election win. Kath Carriedo, UNTV News and Rescue, USA.
And those are the news from the other parts of the globe. Back to you, William.
Thank you very much, Stephanie C., live from Hong Kong. And it's all systems go for the Wish Bus launching later in Hollywood, California, United States of America. Here's why from Sunny Calls.
The much-awaited Wish Bus launching in Hollywood is a few hours away. Filipino wishers from different parts of America have started arriving in Los Angeles, California since yesterday to witness the big event.
Napakaswerte natin dahil Pilipino ang innovator ng Wish Bus. At napakaswerte dahil nagsimula sa Pilipinas tapos ngayon dadalhin nila sa LA, sa North America.
Saya po kasi ito po yung first radio station na galing sa Pilipinas na nakarating dito sa Hollywood. Mas makikilala po tayong mga Pilipino.
Even foreigners are wowed by the concept of the Wish Bus and are now excited to personally see the FM booth on wheels.
I am going to LA despite the distance because I think the Wish Bus is a great idea and I want to see it for myself personally. I also want to see the man behind all of these unique and amazing concepts.
Like, that's dope if like to have like, you know, like a major rap artist out like on a bus and you just sit there and watch them like freestyle or just like you know, rap one of the songs. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's crazy though. I would have never thought about something like that.
OPM artists are set to grace the Wish Bus launching and offer performances for wishers. This includes Michael Keith, Annie Nepomuceno, Perf De Castro, Michael Regalado, Intro Voice, Paco Escochaga, and Wish Jock Robin Rivera.
Having our talent shown not only in the Philippines but like all over, and the fact that we're able to branch out here and just to showcase our talents, it's amazing.
I would say Filipino-American artists really need exposure, this innovation, especially like the Wish Bus. It's really helpful to have like a channel for Filipino-Americans.
The Wish Bus launching will be held in the Universal City Walk Hollywood in Los Angeles, California, later at 5 p.m. A parallel event will be also held for Filipino wishers at the Eastwood City Walk on September 8 at 8 in the morning. Sonicos UNTV News and Rescue, Hollywood, USA.
And those are the reasons behind the news, August 21st, 2018. On behalf of Rina Villamor Camara and Angelo Castro III, I am William Theo. Because we need to know, we will always ask why. Good evening and happy weekend to all.